And James, Ed Davey there was saying that the Liberal Democrats are the big winners of these elections. I suppose you disagree.
Well, you'd expect him to say that. I mean, what I would say, these are a very strong set of results for the Labour Party, and they show that we're on course for a majority Labour government. You know, because we've been campaigning in recent weeks and months about our plan to tackle the cost of living crisis, and what we've seen is gains right across the country. You know, in Middlesbrough, Stoke-on-Trent, Medway, Plymouth. You know, all different parts of the country, showing that we're making that progress in the places we need to win the next general election.
Are you concerned that in the areas where the Labour Party is facing other parties, for example in Hull, there hasn't been progress made for Labour? In fact, it's only where Labour's standing against the Tories where there's been progress. Does that perhaps suggest that it isn't Labour winning the votes and it's more just the Tories that are losing them?
Well, I think when you've had a government that's been in power for 13 years, if you're approaching a general election, people think of it through two different angles. One, the current government losing, and two, the opposition winning. And I think what we're seeing now is that the Conservatives, after 13 years in power, people are just fed up. People want to change. People want to move on from the Conservatives. But people are also looking at Labour and saying, yeah, they've actually got a plan for to tackle the cost of living crisis. They've actually got ideas about the long-term challenges we face. They've actually got some policies there which are more than just sort of sticking plasters to get us through the next few weeks or months. And they're looking to us as an alternative. And I think that's why, as I say, right across the country, we're seeing that progress we need.
We have seen some policy come from Keir Starmer in recent weeks, which is a big change from the last couple of years. But when are we going to see the detail? We hear in the abstract that, for example, planning reform is something the Labour Party wants to pursue, something that no doubt could bring big economic growth to this country. But how are you going to deliver it? The Conservative Party tried to do it 3 times in the last 10 years and were defeated. Why is the Labour Party going to do it differently?
Well, what you can see in the Conservatives now is that they are absolutely governed by division within their own party. You know, there's so much effort goes into just keeping their political party in Parliament together. You know, Rishi Sunak can't do much because he's so hamstrung by his backbenchers. And I think that really shows that there's a government that they're out of energy, out of ideas, you know, can't do the bold things we need to tackle the challenges we face in the future. You know, we know that what we really need are long-term plans to the big challenges that we face, right? So rather than a series of sticking plasters just to get us through the next few weeks or the next few months, we actually need a solution to the big challenges we face. And if you look underneath so many of the problems we face, the really core one underneath all of that is the economy. And the truth is, over the last 13 years, we've had low economic growth, which has led to people's wages stagnating and to lower tax revenue to fund our public services. And that's why our number one mission that we set out, what we would do in government, is to get the economy growing. These highest sustained growth in the G7 is our mission.
How can voters trust that what you're saying now will be the same that you're saying after an election? Your leader has this week U-turned on his pledge to abolish tuition fees. He's U-turned on his pledge to nationalise energy companies. He's U-turned on his pledge to keep free movement with the European Union. All of the pledges that he stood on to become leader of your party seem to have been ditched. And we're seeing a new Keir Starmer now. How do we know that this is the real deal?
Well, I think what Keir set out in his pledges when he stood to be leader of the Labour Party, you know, were his values. It was about what drives him in politics, you know, what his mission is, being an MP, wanting to be leader, wanting to be Prime Minister, and none of that has changed. You know, he's still absolutely committed. No, he's still absolutely committed to, you know, building a fair economy, tackling climate change, restoring public services, and so on. What has changed is the world. The world around us has changed. And actually what we need to do as an opposition is make sure that the manifesto pledges we go into the next election with are right for the times and reflect the economic reality that we're in. You know, the economy has changed, the world has changed so much in the last few years, not least because of Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng and all the damage that they did to the economy last autumn. But we would need to make sure that any pledges we make are fully costed, fully funded, long-term solutions that we can stick by, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Now, just finally, this was the first election in England to have voter ID mandated across the country. Would Labour keep that reform?
Well, look, we thought the introduction of photo ID for voting at elections is unnecessary because it's essentially a solution in search of a problem, because the problem just doesn't exist at the scale that would necessitate a solution of this type. You know, I think in 2019 there was one conviction for voter impersonation, so it's not a widespread problem that needs a solution.
So you would reverse it?
Well, we opposed it when it was going through Parliament. You know, we don't think it's necessary. We think it's a waste of money as well. And I think, frankly, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, to spend all of this money on a system which is not needed is something that will have most voters scratching their heads over.